trigger happy and I give less than a fuck. Love me or hate me, I'ma show enough, rip shit up. It's Mr. Nothing, nice on a mic stand. Mic in the left and the zest in my right hand. I took a puff, had enough now, hold up. If that was Indo, niggas getting rolled up.
Alright folks, this is Acid Root, so I'm going to review Jack Strifey's debut project, which is Glitter and Dirt. So basically this project was what he was up to, and basically he's the lead vocalist of Cinema Bizarre, a group, a German Europop group that I reviewed back in April with Jackal Goldkick, and I wanted to see what was more up with this group just because their abrupt end in early 2010 was a pretty colossal disappointment considering that they had affiliations with Lady Gaga and Akon, and it seemed like they were going to be the next big thing in that relative field along with Jeffree Star and a few others. But they kind of pulled the plug right in amongst the promotion of their second album, which was like called Toys or Bang or something like that. And Jack Strifey decided to do a solo career. And so that's what he was up to. It took him a couple years. He actually put out 3 music videos in 2012 with the songs Brave New World, Sanctuary, and Halo. And then the eventual EP came out in the summer of 2013. Glitter and Dirt, I would basically say, has a nice concoction about it. I do appreciate where this was aiming to be, but it's not quite as full-fledged as I would like it to be. I mean, it has traces of what makes Jack Strifey appealing, and he carries over some of the appeal that he had from Cinema Bizarre, but not quite enough to the point where I feel like, I mean, it makes sense that he attempted to go solo, but the unfortunate thing about it is that this was not quite full-fledged enough to really warrant, like, maybe abandoning Cinema Bizarre so soon, because I really feel like with them only having put out 2.5 albums, I felt like maybe this could have happened years later, but they just abruptly pulled the plug on that, and he went solo, and he started off with an EP, and it's just pretty spotty. I mean, I just would have to say I appreciate like the up-tempo moments on here, but I was kind of looking at, like, I don't remember what I said about the Cinema Bizarre review back in April, but I do kind of recall that there were some moments that were kind of, it seemed like they, you know, they definitely had the up-tempo and more exasperating and kind of paced songs a lot more figured out, but when they tried going for like the power ballad and emotional kind of pop rock that they kind of go for again, that Jack Strifey goes for again on here, it just feels like he's not quite, I mean, it's kind of like Missy Elliott. Like I've said this in some of my Missy Elliott reviews, that Missy Elliott is a fantastic dance music artist. She's fun, she's festive, she knows how to get your ass shaking and that type stuff. But when it switches to like the personal cuts and you start getting some of these moments that are not quite as festive and just more maybe even thought-provoking, it kind of detracts. But I wasn't expecting to say that about Jack Strifey. I mean, he definitely has some moments. I'll go ahead and like talk about some of these. So the first single was Halo, We're the Only One, and this to me sounds exactly like a Cinema Bizarre song. This to me is just Cinema Bizarre circa 2012 and 2013. Brilliant singing on there, real catchy, nice kind of up-tempo kind of club track. Not quite as up-tempo as Sanctuary, but definitely pretty easygoing kind of electro, Europop kind of R&B flavored song. It definitely worked pretty well. And I appreciate the chorus on there. Just overall good vibes. Like, for any people who are absolute fans of Cinema Bizarre, this is exactly what you're looking for if you're looking for something past like their 2009 and 2007 stuff. And I would definitely say that's something that is just like a shot in the arm, like, hey, you know, new Cinema Bizarre, basically. Just overall kicks ass. And then, like, well, what were the other singles? Hang on. Brave New World and Sanctuary. So yeah, so Sanctuary was an even quicker tempo song. It's even more up tempo than Halo We're the Only One. This to me felt like a dance track, definitely a song that you could hear in a light sense in like a rave. It's not quite as vicious as some rave songs, but it definitely could be played in a rave. I definitely kind of feel like it has traces of being able to say that. The chorus is pretty catchy, nice and sing-songy and melodic. I feel like it's these first two songs that you hear, Halo and then Sanctuary, both have that kind of vibe. But I definitely feel like Sanctuary is just more of like a kind of rickety and kind of more jivey kind of songs. I definitely appreciate that. So that's 2 for 2 for Jack Strifey. Unfortunately, what he tries to do with Brave New World, though, I wasn't really feeling these second two songs on here. Fix Me and Brave New World basically attempt to be like power ballads and kind of more of like these are more emotional power ballads that kind of slow things down, and I really didn't appreciate like the slow kind of depressed pianos almost on Fix Me. Was just a little bit more slow than I would have liked it to have been. And then Brave New World kind of comes off as like an almost just kind of a mid-tempo and relatively kind of clumsy like attempt at like Euro pop in like a more power ballad sense. I mean, it doesn't. If you're thinking it has similar energy to Halo, the only one, it doesn't. Just because the vibe towards it is just in a different setting. It's not quite as intended to get you up and moving as much as just it simply feels really progressive and kind of like forward thinking and just more like almost like a hustle song in a lot of ways, just not a rap version of a hustle song, but just kind of real motivated and just forward thinking. And I don't know, both these power ballads kind of were clunkers to me just because I wasn't really looking after like, I mean, I felt like Jack Strifey really had nailed something and really had like a certain kind of aspect about him. And he also included 2 renditions of Halo on here, which I probably thought could have been a couple more songs to have filled out this project. I was surprised at why Strifey didn't want to put like more songs on here to kind of showcase what he was about, because it just felt like, he took 3 years to make this project after breaking up with Cinema Bazaar, and then he only gives you 4 songs. I mean, I guess that's typical just because an EP is supposed to be a teaser to an album, but it could. I do think a few more songs could have been used, especially. I mean, because 2 out of the 3 of the singles he dropped were pretty outstanding. It was just kind of the concept that, like, the main thing, like the thing I felt with this project is the fact that the problem with an EP, as usual, is just the fact that there's not enough room on an EP to really provide an interesting amount of detail, and having like too many clunkers on here really results in like a situation where it kind of sabotages the project. Because to talk about like Halo, the epileptic remix, and then the alternative mix, I felt like the alternative mix was just a softer version of that song. There's really no point to it. I don't know why that was necessary. We could have just as soon taken another version of just another song in general. And then the epileptic remix, I would have liked this song, but it just had too many gaps in like what they were trying to do. I mean, they were really serious with like the epileptic kind of portion of it, where it could have been a really brilliant EDM song if they had just made it toned down like the spaces and the staccato type stuff and just made it like a really crazy EDM song like Zed did or something like that. I felt like what they were attempting to do, but it just got a little bit too over the top. And if they had toned it down like a notch or two, I would have made that song number 3 that I chose out of 6 that I would have liked. It definitely came close, but it just got a little bit 1 or 2 notches too crazy to really support. But it was close. It made it sound like I'm coming off as opinionated, but I feel like the concept behind it is me rating it also based upon like the appeal that as to how much connection Jack Strifey made with his audience. I think it also has to deal with the appeal of what Strifey was kind of going for at the time, because really I think he was fighting an uphill battle in terms of what he was going to be able to do with this project. But it's just kind of, I pay attention to this sort of stuff, and you can kind of tell the folks who are going to be kind of here today and gone tomorrow. But the concept, you just by hearing songs like Halo, We're the Only One, and Sanctuary, and the singles that he had off of Cinema Bazaar, and it's kind of like, if there had been more songs, at least there might have been a sequel. It's the same problem I had with the Garrett Ecstasy EP. Was that was actually a pretty coveted project, I would think, in my opinion, but it unfortunately just kind of came and went. That's the same thing with this project. It's just basically as like a loud pack, as like an extra rendition of a secret kind of stash of more cinema bizarre type stuff, but that's all you can really look at it as. And then on top of that, that there is that there is also some power ballads on here that don't really have their effectiveness. It really kind of shortchanges it to where it's really just a single release and a B side in terms of the quality for me. But that's just kind of the concept. So I'm gonna give this album a 3.5 out of 10. I really feel like it, if I would have liked the Epileptic remix, it would have gotten a 4 or even a 5. I definitely would have said that was pretty close, but I just felt like the stopgap and kind of rickety kind of gap in like how it was. If it had just been a standard vicious EDM song, I would have went with it. But yeah, between the power ballads that didn't work and then the bad renditions of the remix, and then there just not being enough songs, it really kind of felt like it was just a very underwhelming. For what it is, I have faith in Jack Strifey because he is a talented musician and can do his songs and melodies and choruses and production well. It's just the fact that there was not enough room for error. And that's kind of the problem. There really wasn't, and you got that kind of context. And the main thing about it, on top of there not being room for error, the other thing about it is he probably wouldn't have very many chances to make another one of these. It's basically like, he did it at least, but the concept is because it kind of fell flat. It's like, well, he did at least put out an album, but it's just kind of underneath the context of being able to say that, I don't know. It just has a lot to do with momentum. That's really the thing. It has to do with momentum. And obviously, like I said, it's just difficult at this stage for him. He probably was just going to be like, kind of like other folks like that, like Garrett Ecstasy, where he just kind of puts things out off to the side. But, really, obviously, if there's not enough of a following, you're not going to be able to put out music at all. So that's kind of the situation. But the social score, I will give like a 5 out of 10 because it did have 3 singles, and these were pretty, decently stellar reception considering that Strifey was kind of on his own. So I think that that's kind of the concept there, is just as far as being able to say that these got decent reception, but unfortunately it just seemed like folks did not really give him much of a chance or even notice and give it much of spare thought, which is kind of, I mean, that's another concept as to why, most people just kind of shrugged and that was it. And he went back. He did drop an album called Illusion. That's the future, is saying that, he put out an album, Strifey put out an album in 2014 called Illusion, but that's really the last trace that we got. So it's just kind of, I mean, that's the concept of what had happened, is just trying to say, I mean, there was really, it's difficult in that kind of field, but it's just like, what can you do? I mean, that's the real question you have to ask at this point. But yeah,